Mabuhay, this is Bob from Love Beyond the Sea. I want to talk about answering the phone, pick up the phone, availability here today. This is a channel about, finding love overseas and mostly how to be married once you find someone, which I don't think is all that difficult. But getting along, that's another story. And part of that is going to be communication and phones. So let's talk about that here today. I hope you please subscribe to Love Beyond the Sea. This is from an article, boredpanda.com. I don't know anything about that, but it's about a man shared how upset his wife got after he turned off his phone during a tech-free weekend with his best friend and missed a family emergency. Please leave comments if you can relate to this, how you do it with making sure that you can communicate with each other. And it's a Reddit story about a guy and his best friend. They have this habit of taking a yearly weekend trip together. I guess they've been doing it for like 10 years. And they like to stay completely disconnected, from the rest of the world. And that can cause some problems. So he's talking about this time he took his trip. The first time he'd gone on one of these trips since his wife and him got together and engaged or got married. And she hadn't said anything about it, the last 2 years. And he told her he's going to be busy doing this weekend trip again. And he didn't expect this response from his wife. What happened there was he let her know that they had arrived. Immediately after that, she was texting him and asking him how things were. Then again, asking another question, when he didn't respond to the first one. Eventually, he muted their text conversation because he said he was sick of the phone buzzing. She called a few hours later and asked why he wasn't responding. And he reiterated this was supposed to be a no phone weekend and kept the call short despite her trying to drag out the conversation. Already, to me, it sounds like there's something amiss going on here. Called him once again after that. Found out it wasn't an emergency. I guess he'd be okay with an emergency. And turned off his phone. And calls started coming in for his friend, and he did the same thing. And they spent the rest of the weekend with their phones off, and they drove back Monday. Then he called his wife and informed her when he was about half an hour away from home, and she was furious. She said that there ended up, wouldn't you know it, being an emergency. Her sister got in a car accident, and that won't affect her long term, but it resulted in broken bones, and that he had just ignored her the entire time when she needed him is what bothered her. And, so it's almost like she's crying wolf, but not intentionally, and then something does happen. And so I wanted to talk about this deal of using your phone and how often you keep it on personally. I mean, my wife, if you're married to Filipina, they're on their phone a lot. And I like to communicate. In fact, I had told her one time, please let me know when you get to work, just so I know that you're safe and you got there and you're not stranded somewhere. I do worry about that. I worry about her well-being. And so whether it was in response to that or something else, she's got this app on our phones where we both can see when we arrive somewhere. If I say, hon, I'm going to the gym, or I'm going to the store, I'm going to the doctor, going to run out with my mother and take her to the doctor, whatever, she can tell that we arrived. She can tell the distance we drove, top speed, and how long it took, and that we arrived. So I feel good about that. Makes me feel safe. And when I call her, I kind of do expect an answer, and there are times I have to tell myself, let me know if you do the same thing, where I expect her to be available at my beck and call immediately or sooner. And I fail to think, well, if I'm like somewhere else and I call her, maybe she's in the shower. I'm not going to answer the phone when I'm in the shower, I guess, unless I'm really expecting something important. I might dry my hand off and answer the phone, but probably not. And so she could be in the shower. She might be driving. And she used to have her phone set up that would or say, I'm driving right now, I can't talk to you. And that would be a message everybody would get. That's also a good idea. Keeps you from messing with your phone when you should be concentrating on driving. And she just may not be available. Maybe like me, she often forgets her phone and leaves it in the car seat instead of putting it in her purse or her pocket. And so these things happen, and there are misunderstandings. In this case, I don't like the idea, of course, of being away from your wife and not even for a weekend and not allowing her to contact you. Sometimes you're away, and you can't always be there if there is an emergency, but she needed his emotional support or needed him to know it was important to her, and he wasn't around for that. And part of that was getting all those calls earlier that he thought, well, these aren't helping me, I don't want to hear it. That just bothers me. You should never want to not hear from your wife. The fact that she's calling so much maybe indicates she doesn't trust him. And if he had just answered the first time or two, maybe she wouldn't have called back again unless or until the emergency happened. I like to keep the lines of communication open. I sure hope you do too. And communication is always important. I always feel like if she doesn't get back to me right away, then she's ignoring me. And this just simply may not be true. I have my own personal rule when someone contacts me, whether it's by text or email or phone call, that I get back to them within 24 hours. Because to me, it feels disrespectful to the other person for me to not get back to them. It's like, well, you don't matter. You're low in my pecking order. Well, I kind of try to treat everybody the same, so I want to get back to them. So please answer the phone if your spouse is calling you, if you at all possibly can. And it's okay to let them know that you're taking the call from your spouse, somebody very important to you. No one more important if you're married than your love beyond the sea.